All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our event today you've been approved for OPWDD, your school age child, and now what? Definitely a question a lot of us have, and we've got some wonderful presenters today, Juliet Wentworth and Madison Softly, sorry if I say your name wrong, from the Southern Tier Connect, and they're gonna jump right in. So I'm gonna turn it right over to you guys.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Juliet Wentworth. I am one of the two intake and eligibility coordinators with Southern Tier Connect. Madison is my counterpart. What we specifically do is we help people through that eligibility process with OPWDD. And then once the individual has been approved and has Medicaid in place, they get a care manager assigned to them within our agency, and then the care manager helps them with the next steps. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to talk about, what Southern Tier Connect is, what care coordination organizations are. We're going to talk briefly about the eligibility criteria, how you get OPWDD services, and then talk about what services are available once you receive eligibility, and then answer any questions that people might have. So we are one of 7 care management agencies across the state of New York that service individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So the individual has to have an intellectual or developmental disability as their primary diagnosis. They can have other diagnoses as well, but that primary diagnosis has to be an intellectual or developmental disability. The care management, care coordination organizations changed from Medicaid Service Coordination in 2018 when the state decided that care management services needed to be separated out from agencies that provided other waiver services. Our agency currently services about 1,300 individuals, and we have 39 care managers and 7 supervisors across our 14-county catchment area. So a lot of the information we're going to share with you today is not specific to Southern Tier Connect. It encompasses all of the care coordination organizations and OPWDD eligibility. The care coordination piece really is just based on where you live. So all the criteria for eligibility is all the same no matter where you live in the state of New York because it's governed by OPWDD. It's just who you choose to go with to kind of help you get through that door. So CCOs, they were designed to help individuals develop person-centered services and care planning. So we're looking at assisting people with helping to identify what their supports are, what they need in order to help them live as independently as possible in their community of choice. We also help them to monitor their health. We know a lot of people struggle with trying to find primary care physicians, getting appointments, getting specialized providers. So the care manager serves as that individual who helps them make those linkage and referrals to providers that they need to help them continue to live as independently as possible in their community of choice, as well as maintaining optimal health. There are some services that we'll talk about called family support services that don't require you to have a care manager. It just requires you to have that OPWDD eligibility. So our agency specifically covers 14 counties, and we have 6 offices spread throughout our 14-county catchment area, where we have care managers who are in the office at least 3 days a week. For individuals who can just drop in, they have a question for their care manager. If their care manager isn't in the office that day, there are other care managers who might be able to help them answer that question. So, we are a small agency. However, our primary focus was to have individuals and care managers available for people to just kind of drop in if they have questions. I've had several people just drop into the office and say they wanted to go through the eligibility process. So it really helps to have people in an office location where you can just drop in at any time, during normal business hours to talk to someone about any supports and services that you might need. Eligibility, if you are still seeking to get OPWDD eligibility, I just want to touch briefly on what that means. So OPWDD eligibility is determined by New York State mental hygiene law. So New York State mental hygiene says that in order to get eligibility, you have to meet 4 criteria. So one is you have to have one of those qualifying conditions: intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, Prader-Willi syndrome, familial dysautonomia, or other neurological impairments, something that affects your central nervous system. The disability must be diagnosed prior to the age of 22. So, mental hygiene law has determined that the developmental period for individuals goes up until the age of 22. So, if they haven't been formally diagnosed, then they're going to be looking for documentation during that developmental period that will confirm that they did have delays in their cognitive and adaptive functioning. The disability is expected to be permanent. We know that it's not something that you grow out of, that will just go away as your health improves. And the disability must be so serious that it affects the person's ability to live everyday life independently without the supports of um, staffing or other environmental modifications. On our website, we do have a eligibility online quiz. So if you're really not sure, people can go to the website, answer a variety of questions, and that'll tell them whether it might be a good idea for them to pursue eligibility or not. So when we're talking about how we get the process started, OPWDD is the governing body. So basically what an individual has to do is they have to call the front door of OPWDD and let them know that they want to do the process. If this is their starting point, they can call the OPWDD general front door number, let them know what county they live in. They will direct you to the specific region. OPWDD is broken down into 6 regional offices. So based on where you live, they will tell you this is the region, region 2, region 3, that you'll have to call to start that process with a front door social worker. Like I said, there are 7 care coordination organizations throughout the state of New York. Each county in New York has at least 2 choices. Some counties do have 3 choices, so 3 organizations that they can contact to start the process with. Someone can call Southern Tier Connect directly. We do have people who, have a family member, have a neighbor, friend, they heard about us at school. They can call us directly also to start that eligibility process. We will still tell them that you do also have to call OPWDD and let them know. So I have our contact information on there as well. Our specific role is gathering that documentation through releases and meeting with the individuals to collect those records that OPWDD looks for. And then once we have the documentation, we submit it to OPWDD because, like I said, they are the governing body. They are the ones that say yes or no. We're just kind of helping them through that front door. So once you've made the connections with OPWDD and a care coordination organization, we will work with the individual to collect all those records. So they're looking for psychological evaluations, typically any and all that have been completed. They're looking for IEPs, 504 plans. If a child is not enrolled in CSE, we will still reach out to the school and the school will just respond back to us with a statement saying the student is not a CSE student at this time. And then we submit that. If they have OTPT speech evaluations, we're looking for those. We're looking for a physical that's been completed in the last 365 days. The social history, which is just capturing their current abilities and the developmental period. Those are specific to CCOs. Each care coordination organization has a form that they work with the family on getting some of that developmental period history and their current abilities. Any other specialty assessments and mental health assessments. So we're looking for that specific autism evaluation. If the individual has autism, we're looking for neurology reports. If individuals have been diagnosed with epilepsy or seizure disorder, if they have co-occurring diagnoses and they're seeing a mental health specialist, OPWDD will often request treatment plans from the mental health counselor. So we work with their counselor to get those. Once we have all the documentation, we submit it to OPWDD. They have 30 days from the date they receive our information to review it with a psychologist and determine if the person has eligibility. or if they need additional documentation with us. Once OPWDD has determined eligibility, then we work with the individual to discuss their Medicaid eligibility to get care management. Because in order to have care management with any CCO, you have to have Medicaid health insurance. We do not bill to Child Health Plus for care management or OPWDD waiver services. So we'll talk about schools and eligibility and how the schools can help support our process through getting someone eligibility. So when we're talking about psychological evaluations, typically schools are doing those IQ evaluations or a psychological evaluation every 3 years. If a child is not able to have their IQ tested, we just ask that the psychologist in the school documents that on their evaluation. We've tried to do an IQ evaluation on the student, but due to their limitations, they're not able to have one completed. Adaptive assessments, OPWDD is very strict and only accepts the ABAS, ABAS, or Vineland. The BASC, which is the social emotional adaptive assessment, is not acceptable to OPWDD to determine what someone's adaptive functioning is. OPWDD also likes to see that an adaptive assessment has been completed within the last year. We know that most of the time psychological evaluations are done every 3 years, so schools might not have the ability to do another adaptive assessment on a student off cycle. So we will talk to the school about that. If the school is not able to complete that, then we refer the individual and the family to an outside agency that might be able to complete that adaptive assessment for them. Also, OPWDD likes to see parent and teacher responses on those adaptive assessments. So if for some reason the parent doesn't work with the school to get theirs back in time, so they only have the teacher scores to report, they may often ask us to have a separate evaluation completed to get the parent scores. Typically, OPWDD wants to see all IEPs and psychological evaluations. So if we're talking a student who is 16, 17, 18 years old, that could be several IEPs. But OPWDD wants to see all of the documentation. So if for some reason a student doesn't have that many or they change schools often, the school just need to let us know, the student came to us in 4th grade, so you'll need to reach out to a different school to get anything before that. Schools are able to make direct referrals to care coordination organizations if they feel that an individual might benefit from the process. We will still reach out to the family and just talk with them to make sure that they are willing to participate in the process. This can be a very lengthy process. It's all voluntary. We don't make anybody participate in any of the services. And that goes for all CCOs. OPWDD services are strictly voluntary. We can't force people to participate in our programming. And the families have to be willing and responsive to go through this eligibility process. If OPWDD does request additional documentation, maybe we didn't get all of the IEPs, or sometimes they want to see early intervention records. So they might send me a letter saying, hey, we need to see the early intervention records also. So they'll send us a more information letter with additional items they might be requesting that we have to help the family collect. They might determine that after the first review, there isn't enough information to give a solid yes. So they send the referral to second step eligibility, which means it's another psychologist within the eligibility department reviewing and comparing to mental hygiene law to see if another set of eyes can determine if somebody is eligible for services. If someone gets denied eligibility, they have the option, they can go through an appeal process with OPWDD. They can request another review, which is a Zoom meeting where we sit down with eligibility personnel at OPWDD and just kind of talk about what supports are needed, evaluations that were completed. They might still request additional information, or the decision might not change after the conference. If that's the case, then Southern Tier Connect will close out the referral if the denial is confirmed. We will talk with the family to see if maybe care management under the children's waiver, which is under the mental health silo with the state of New York, if that care management might be a good fit for them. Sometimes families just need a little direction on what other supports and services might be available to them. So we'll have those conversations to see if there's any place else that we can make a referral to. If the student has Medicaid, and they've been approved for eligibility, then they'll work with Madison and I to complete our enrollment packet, and they'll enroll in care management the following month. So we can't go retroactive. So if somebody is approved today, they can't enroll for care management with us until April 1st. If there is no Medicaid in place, it's a little bit longer of a process. We talk with the individual and the family about what their needs are. And then we have to make a separate special request to OPWDD for those Medicaid waiver funded services. If OPWDD approves that second request for those Medicaid waiver funded services, then we will work with the individual to get Medicaid eligibility, which also includes doing a separate evaluation for the Department of Health because they oversee Medicaid. So we won't leave them hanging. We'll still help them through that process. It will just take a little bit extra time to get that Medicaid in place. When we're looking at OPWDD services, there are a variety of services that a family could benefit from. There are Medicaid funded services and non-Medicaid funded services. Non-Medicaid funded services would be educational advocacy. So if families find that they're having a hard time through the CSE IEP meeting process, there are advocates that work with provider agencies who will sit in with them on IEP meetings and who specialize in education law and can help to advocate for any supports that might be needed in the school setting. There are reimbursement programs for respite. Respite is compared to like a babysitter. It's somebody that you're paying that you trust to come and provide an extra set of hands. So maybe you can run to the store without taking all of the children in tow with you. So you have your neighbor or grandma come and stay with the kids while you go to the store. And then the family can get reimbursed for that payment that they pay grandma to come and sit with their child with eligibility. So that they can go outside the home and do needed things. There are behavior support programs, there are after school programs. Some agencies have lending libraries. So if if it was recommended that your child might need a piece of adaptive equipment, you could borrow one on a temporary basis to see how it works and to see if it meets your child's needs before going through Medicaid to get that purchased for you. There's support groups. A lot of agencies are doing in-person or online support groups for parents, just giving parents or caregivers that opportunity to connect with other families who might be experiencing the same challenges of raising children with disabilities, of navigating the school system. So it's just an added support for families to be able to connect with somebody. There are habilitation services that and respite services that can take place before or after school. You cannot receive waiver services during school hours unless it is a snow day, scheduled holiday break, or summer break. So you have someone come and help the child get ready for school in the morning, and then come back after school is over and do things out in the community or do things within their home. Once children and students are ready to transition out of school, there are employment services and other day programming services where someone could develop work skills. They could have a job coach. There's other community rehabilitation programs that do things out in the community, volunteering. There's assistive technology and vehicle modifications, environmental modifications. So if a child uses a wheelchair, but they need a ramp into the home, you can look at getting environmental modifications to get a ramp for the home. If the child has OPWDD eligibility, there's housing opportunities for adults. There are subsidies for rent, or there are residential opportunities with different agencies. If the individual does not have the ability to live at home with caregivers or live independently. Okay, if a child is OPWDD eligible and doesn't know the next steps, you can always refer them to a care coordination organization. Um, Madison and I both take calls where we just kind of talk with a school or other provider agencies. They run a scenario or a situation by us, and we kind of give them an idea of what might be helpful. Families can just kind of call and talk about their situation. Maybe after we discuss with them what care management is, what OPWDD is, they might decide that maybe now is not a good time, but in the future, um, when they're getting ready to transition into adulthood, they want to go through the process. So we're always here. Anybody can call any of the care coordination organizations and just kind of bounce ideas and situations off of them, so that you know how to best support the family or the students that you're working with. OPWDD is very big on their services are not meant to replace supports in school. They are to be used as a wraparound program. So always after school hours, um, there's certain services that if they're provided in the school. You cannot get them outside of with OPWDD. So like private speech therapy, um, won't be offered if it's something the school is requesting. So if the school feels that the child needs speech therapy or OT and PT, the school has to provide those services in the school. OPWDD won't provide those services if the school is saying it's a need. How can a care coordination organization support a school district? We provide in-service education to staff on eligibility and OPWDD supports. We can support the family with attending outside appointments and ensure that paperwork that is needed by the school is signed and returned. So we're always willing to do outreach. We'll come to the schools and we'll talk about what OPWDD means. It's beneficial for a lot of school staff if they are not familiar with OPWDD. We can come and do presentations on your staff development days so that we can kind of talk and make everybody familiar with OPWDD and how a care coordination organization can support those students and their families. How can a CCO support a family with a child in school? We can also attend IEP and 504 plan meetings. It's not just for the educational advocates. We can also come to help the families advocate during that time as well. With the family's permission, we can visit the child in school to make sure that the services are being provided according to their IEP or 504 plan. We can also refer families to appropriate school advocacy organizations as needed. So these are some of the questions when people registered for the presentation that they were looking to have answered. What services are available to school-age children deemed eligible for OPWDD? So services are based on your age and need. Typically, OPWDD is saying children under the age of 10 should be utilizing the family support services, those non-Medicaid funded programming that we talked about before asking OPWDD for home and community-based waiver services. So your family support services are those reimbursed respite programs, the educational advocacy, behavior support programs. What OPWDD is looking for is that families have tried community and natural supports to meet the needs of their child and their family before asking OPWDD for supports and services that are billed to Medicaid. After the age of 10, it seems to be a little bit easier for families to get those Medicaid funded services. We're still having to provide a justification of need. There isn't really a push for utilizing community supports and natural services like there is with the younger children. How can the school districts interplay with OPWDD services? So we talked about OPWDD services cannot be delivered during the school hours unless it's a break, summer program, or a snow day. So some of the provider agencies are very meticulous. They will check a school calendar to see if it was a staff development day, if it was a snow day, if community hab or respite staff are submitting timesheets that are during a school day. How can students obtain all services they need while still receiving an education? There are only so many hours in a day. So when families are meeting with their care managers to discuss what their needs are, care managers will ask, how much time do you think, given homework, being in school all day, any other extracurricular activities that that student might be participating in, how many hours do you think that they could sustain without it pushing them to their limits? So they'll have those conversations. And then OPWDD will really limit the number of hours that would be willing to approve for school age children. It's not really feasible, and they're not going to approve student to have 25 to 30 hours a week of outside supports and services on top of being school age. What level of support does FSS, which is the Family Support Services, and OPWDD offer in addition to the role of the family guardian? The level, type, duration of support varies dependent on the program, but no program is meant to replace the role of a parent. For example, OPWDD will not authorize services solely so the caregiver can go to work. All caregivers, regardless of child ability, disability, must coordinate their work-home lives. So that is one of the large pushes with OPWDD that I talked about, is they want families to utilize their natural supports and services. Um, One of the things that I was often told when I tried to advocate for a family to have services is, if your child didn't have any disabilities, you'd still have to have somebody to watch them after school, or, take them from one place to another. So they really, really want you to show and justify the need to have supports and services outside of typical parent responsibilities. That might be getting justifications from specialists, developmental pediatricians, OT, PT, other therapists. Uh, It's really doing additional investigation with the families and providing that documentation to support the need for other services. How long does the process take from referral to services starting? This varies significantly based on the time to collect records, responsiveness of the family, and if new testing is necessary. While we can't provide exact data on starting waiver services, the average time frame from time of first call to Southern Tier Connect to enrollment with Southern Tier Connect is 6 months. The range is 2 weeks to over 2 years, so it really depends on the responsiveness of the family. I've had several referrals where they'll call and I'll go over with them the information that we need, and they'll say to me, I have a whole file, I have a whole bucket of information. Can we get together? I will go to their home, they will come to our office with their totes of information, and we will go through it, and I will pick out the information that I need and scan it to myself. Um, I've had different times where parents have no information at all because they have moved several times, so they don't have the records. And I have to wait for schools to complete new evaluations, or they've gone to multiple schools. So I'm trying to connect with multiple CSE teams to get old records. Um, People don't have an autism evaluation. So the waiting list right now in most areas across the state of New York to get an autism evaluation is at least 2 years. Um, and that's based on billing to insurance. There's not very many providers. There are a few providers who will complete certain evaluations out of pocket and don't bill to insurance. That having that option is great. However, most of the people, that we work with are not able to pay a couple $1,000s to get a current evaluation done. So that has a factor. Even just getting a simple physical with your primary care provider can be a wait anymore, especially if people have to switch providers. So that is all a factor. OPWDD has been under more strict guidelines of how long it takes them to review cases. Um, so 30 and 60 days is really the time frame for them to review things once they receive it. It's just collecting records. Sometimes families will start the process with us and everything will go well, and then they just kind of, um, we don't hear from them anymore, or life happens. People get sick, people move, things happen, and they just can't. Now is not a good time. So sometimes people will call us and say, now is not a good time, and we can close out their referral and they can call us back when they're ready. Can OPWDD assist a high-functioning child with autism? While autism is a qualified condition, the adaptive deficit also needs to be met. If anyone has ever seen The Good Doctor, he would not be OPWDD eligible even though he has autism due to his adaptive scores. His daily functioning is not substantially impaired. So when OPWDD is looking at the substantial handicap to adaptive functioning, they are looking on an ABAS or a Vineland. It's scored with numbers, so anything under a 70 is what they're looking for. So basically, they look at, based on a student's age, what is the standard expectation of a child at the age of 9, at the age of 10? What are there things in everyday life that they should be able to do in theory based on their age? Can they dress themselves? Can they undress themselves? Do they pick up after themselves? Can they get themselves, a small snack? They're not expecting a 10-year-old to be able to cook a 7-course meal. But can the individual get themselves a snack from the cupboard? Can they express their wants and needs? So those are all factors in different aspects of their life that they are looking at in comparison to a child at that age without any limitations. Someone had indicated they've been approved for OPWDD eligibility, but they're lost. They're not sure, what the next steps are. So if you already have eligibility, you should be working with a care coordination organization, intake specialist like myself or Madison. They should be having conversations with you about what's next. Do you have that Medicaid in place where you can get a care manager? If yes, then you can get a care manager and they will connect with you on what the next steps are, talking with you about the supports and services that are needed. This person was looking for providers for self-direction. So OPWDD has a list of agencies that provide self-directed services based on the region. So if this is you and this was your registration comment, I would encourage you to reach out to the care coordination organization that helped you get eligibility, talk to that intake coordinator, see if they can get you a care manager assigned, and then they will connect you with a self-directed services provider. If maybe you had eligibility approved a while ago and you, for whatever reason, didn't progress forward, you can always go right back to OPWDD, to the regional office that you talked with, and they will get you reconnected with a care coordination organization, tell you which ones cover the county in which you live in, and just kind of get that back on track for you.
Julia,
Here, yep.
really quick, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. If you want, I can just read them off to you and then we can
Sure.
answer them.
Mhm.
All right. So when you say the individual has Medicaid, is it any type of Medicaid? One of my kids has Medicaid directly through the county, and he has had OPWDD for many years. My other son, both have autism and other diagnoses, just was determined eligible for OPWDD, but he has an HMO Medicaid plan with the state. I feel like I need to switch him to the other Medicaid.
So that to me sounds like they're through the health exchange. So if you have Medicaid insurance through the health exchange, you can still have care management. It's when we're talking about those waiver Medicaid funded services, so the respite, the community habilitation, that's when your care manager will work with you to get a separate determination in conjunction with the Department of Health. So if the child has Medicaid through the local county, it's likely because that child has SSI, or they have already been in receipt of waiver services to be at that county level.
Okay. Next one, it can be challenging when somebody is 22 years or older, but this is the type of situation where you should enlist in an attorney or advocate. If anyone wants to private message this person, that was Allison Morris. She said that. Have you been finding that OPWDD is making it harder and harder to be found eligible, telling families that they must have an ADOS and that a CARS is not enough, along with psychological or repeatedly requesting more documents?
Yes. So what what a psychologist in our Region 2 eligibility department has told me is that the ADOS, so that's an evaluation that can be used to screen for autism. That's the gold standard. So that's the best evaluation. They really like to see those. The CARS, the CARS, is an abbreviated um short story version of a screening tool for autism. So it doesn't have the same uh protocols, I guess you'd want to say, as the ADOS and some other autism evaluations. So yes, if somebody has had a CARS for autism, OPWDD will ask for a more comprehensive um, evaluation to be completed. Along with, I've had a few individuals who've gone to their primary doctor, for a well child visit or whatever the case is, and they've, talked to them about different things that they've been seeing the child do. Characteristics, struggles, signs and symptoms, all of those things. And the doctor, listens to them and says, yep, that aligns with an autism diagnosis. So the doctor will then put on their paperwork they have an autism diagnosis. That may be okay for schools or for other supports and services that a family might be looking for. But if they are looking for OPWDD services, you have to have a formal, comprehensive diagnostic evaluation to have that autism diagnosis. So a medical doctor, your primary care physician, for OPWDD purposes, cannot diagnose with autism. It's not enough.
And I'll also mention, because I've run into this, there is a telehealth provider called As You Are, and they do virtual assessments for autism diagnoses, and OPWDD does not accept their reports. I've had families use As You Are, and OPWDD will say that they're not going to accept that, and they need to go through another provider to get that autism diagnosis. Next question. I have no idea where to begin finding services that will address the life skills needs that my 19-year-old daughter will need. She has been approved, but we haven't done anything else yet. How to find things? Can they be classes?
Maybe classes. So there are classes out there that individuals can take to help build those daily living skills. If they charge money to attend those classes, um, it might be something that self-directed services can reimburse for, as long as it's a class that's offered to anybody in the community. It's published and it's not just tailored for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's something that a self-directed plan might be able to reimburse for. Um, if you have a care manager, I would reach out to your care manager and just let them know you're looking to see what's next. Community rehabilitation might be a good idea. I know a lot of the agencies around the state, it doesn't really matter whether it's this field or another field, staffing everywhere is an issue. I encourage people when they're thinking about somebody to work with their loved one. It could be grandparents, it could be aunts and uncles, it could be cousins. Anybody can provide that service as long as they don't live in the home with the individual. They pass the state background checks and have the trainings with an agency. Talk to aides at school. There might be an aide that a student made a really good connection with at school, and they might be willing to to continue working with that student for a couple hours, a couple days a week after school to work on those daily living skills. I know sometimes relatives don't want to, get paid to work with their grandchild. Okay. Take that paycheck that you're getting from that agency to provide that service and take your grandchild out to eat or buy them, a sensory item or anything that they're looking for. Um, and it's hard. People don't want to, just hire somebody stranger off the street to care with their loved one. I get it. Um, so I would just encourage people to kind of think about the connections that they have in the community to look for staff, church groups, school, colleges, anything that they could think of to hire somebody to be the staff person to provide community help for that daily living skills.
Okay. What is the process for a school official, like a counselor, to make a referral?
You would call, since I'm not sure where you're living, I would call the OPWDD front door, which we put the general line in the slides, and they're going to know, they're going to share that with you all after the presentation. But you can call and make a referral, and then they will give you a list based on the county that you live in, a list of the care coordination organizations that cover the county in which that member lives, and then they can reach out and make contact with the family.
Okay. How much of a role do or should care managers play in securing vocational or day programs after high school?
Well, in order to secure those supports and services, you have to have a care manager because the care manager is making that connection. So there needs to be discussions with the care manager. They should be, leading the discussion about what supports and services might be helpful. They can help set up tours of day cap programming. They can connect you with employment programs so that the employment director or other job coaches within the program can help you decide what supports for employment services might be beneficial. If you need a certain type of work skills program, there are a variety of programs under employment services. So the care manager should be making that connection with you to agencies that provide those services so that they can do the evaluations and assessments needed to determine which employment program would be the best fit for the person. Oh, I think Nancy, you're muted if you're talking to us.
Thank, thank you. Just another comment on that. The person that asked that question messaged me, and the person works for a school, and the care manager has been sending the paperwork to the school to complete, including SSI applications and other things. And the student and the family have, with the student and the family, and it's been very tough given the school's caseloads. What is your thought on that?
I would reach out to the care manager and ask them why they're sending it to the school and not to home. I mean, I think there might be for certain employment programs, there might be a form that the school needs to complete, depending on what type of employment program that is. But if you're not making headway with the care manager, you can always speak to their supervisor and express your concerns and just go up the chain of command. If you're still not satisfied, you can always call OPWDD and explain the difficulty that you're having, and they can give you options and talk with you about either them reaching out to the care coordination organization. That's happened a few occasions for us where, families are frustrated with their care manager. So they call OPWDD, and then OPWDD will call the care coordination organization and just kind of talk it out with them, facilitate that connection. And then families can ultimately always change. Just because you start with Southern Tier Connect or Life Plan or Care Design, whatever the organization is, you're not stuck with us. You can always change. People change because they move locations. So they move into our catchment area, they move out of our catchment area. You're never stuck. And if you're not getting anywhere with your care coordination organization, I would encourage people to call OPWDD. Each region has a care coordination liaison who kind of is the complaint department, I guess you want to call it. where you can touch base with someone regarding the challenges that you might be having with your care coordination organization.
You can also contact Disability Rights New York because that is something that we advocate for. So if there's an ongoing issue like that, um, this is an unusual situation. You certainly can contact us and see how we can assist.
Okay. The next question. So what about a child with the 3 markers for FASD? Is it the same as the autism eligibility?
So fetal alcohol syndrome isn't a qualifying condition. So they would have to have one of the other diagnoses in conjunction with FASD. So for example, you might have noticed that Down syndrome is not on there, which is wild to me because we know how Down syndrome affects the body and how it ages individuals. So in order to qualify, you have to have Down syndrome also with an intellectual disability, also with autism, also with a seizure disorder that makes you have deficits in your cognitive and adaptive functioning. So if they have fetal alcohol syndrome, they also have to have one of the other conditions in conjunction. So just solely fetal alcohol syndrome is not a qualifying condition.
And then to kind of piggyback off that, this person said it does not count as a neurological disorder.
That is going to be up to the eligibility department psychologist. I have not seen somebody in 6 years get qualified solely with that diagnosis. I don't know if you have, Madison.
I don't think just with that diagnosis. Okay, so for my child who was just deemed OPWDD eligible, they have an HMO Medicaid plan with the state. They'd like to move forward with care management and self-direction, which tells them that the HMO Medicaid would need to be shifted to the county Medicaid to be eligible for waiver services. They just want to clarify that.
Correct.
Okay. And this is more of just a comment. Access to ADOS testing is limited and expensive. A skilled clinician using an ADOS along with DSM can certainly meet criteria. As a provider, this is all infuriating as we have families waiting years, sometimes through their own reasons for everything. And I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So this person filled out a Vineland not knowing really how to answer it. For an example, he can brush his teeth. They answered it. If yes, he can, but needs help either like with physical help, being told he needs to with those prompting, and it doesn't happen. All answers followed like this. He scored a 72, and this person just wish they knew, what to do with help filling out that Vineland.
The person who gave the evaluation should be instructing the caregiver on how to complete it. Whether that's a school psychologist, whether that's an outside provider agency, whoever is giving you that to have it scored should be instructing you and talking with you about how to answer those questions. I've been told you're thinking about the student or your child on, their worst day. There's a difference between being able to complete the function physically, but having the cognitive ability to understand, brushing your teeth, the motions of doing it, all of those things affect it. Someone can physically do the action, but understanding how to do it and the steps needing to do it isn't there. So they should have been instructing you and explaining to you what that looks like when answering those questions.
Okay. What is involved in making someone a respite provider for your child? Who do you reach out to?
So you would have to identify agencies that provide that service in the county that you live in. So I'm just going to use, I'm a Shenango County resident. So I know in Shenango County, Achieve, Springbrook, and Delaware Opportunities are the agencies in my county where I live that have that respite service. So your care manager should be telling you, these are the agencies in the county in which you live in that provide this service. Once you identify, okay, I'm going to work with Achieve, and my mom is going to be my child's provider. So my mom has to connect with Achieve, fill out their application, and then go through the background check and any required training. So OPWDD requires trainings that people have to complete annually. So they would complete those trainings with Achieve or whatever agency is providing that service. So first, I would say connect with the care manager to find out what agencies deliver the respite service in a county in which you live in. And then you apply with that agency to follow their steps for hiring.
Okay. I have a student who is classified with autism and is newly eligible. His psychiatrist is recommending a residential placement in conjunction with OPWDD and the school district. How do I, as the CSE chairperson, facilitate this process?
If the school is on board with day school option, so being in a different placement, the CSE would have to apply to different residential school opportunities. And as long as the parents are okay and in agreement with the residential placement, because there are two options. There is day school programming. So an agency in our area where I currently live is Springbrook. So they have day school options. They also have residential school where the student goes and lives there throughout the year. So day school, there's struggles and there's difficulties in school. Everything is okay at home. So the school says, yes, we agree to having that placement. The school works with Springbrook because that's the agency that they're choosing to apply and go through their eligibility process. So they would need to reach out to area residential alternative programming schools to go through their eligibility process.
Okay. Does DCD, developmental coordination disorder, count as a qualifying disorder for OPWDD eligibility? It is considered a neurological disorder, but I have a client who is certain her child with this diagnosis will not qualify.
Can you say that again, Madison? It's
Developmental coordination disorder. It's a neurological disorder.
It sounds like something, I think I've seen like developmental and coordination delays for younger kids. It would also depend on what the student's IQ score is also.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things that you would have to put all of those pieces and documentation together, and then the eligibility team would ultimately make that decision.
It's probably one of those, the other neurological impairments and the familial dysautonomia is kind of a gray area where it's really in the hands of the psychologist as to what qualifies for those, because I think the net for those are large.
Juliet, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Um, I get the qualifications, and I understand that, well, you can't allow just everybody to have participation in this program because then the funding wouldn't be there. But why is it that they're making it so difficult to? I mean, I've heard three different people ask three different questions that should be qualified, and in a sense, you're telling them no, and especially the last one, if it's neuro, it's neuro. Neuro means neuro. I mean, there's no denying neuro.
That's not us. That is
Okay.
New York State mental
Then
hygiene law.
okay, so why are they making it so difficult though?
That is New York State. I don't think really New York State has adapted mental hygiene law only to add a couple diagnoses.
Okay. All right.
That
Well, yeah,
is
I just don't think
that is
it's
your, Yep, that's your legislators, that's your assemblymen. They're the ones,
I get it. I mean, I'm not picking on you. Don't get me wrong. If that's the way it sounded, I'm sorry. I didn't, but um, I just know that, I mean, that's a lot of hoops
Mhm.
just to try to get this program for people,
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
And we're
you
just the
know?
messengers, unfortunately.
I get that. I get that. I mean, my son is on your program, so I mean, I understand, but I just don't think that, I think that something should be brought up about neuro is neuro. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Neuro is neuro. You know, if somebody was to say, well, they have to have a broken bone, what bone does it matter that's broken? If it's a bone that's broken, it's broken. I
No, I
mean,
think we all
neuro is neuro,
understand the
you
frustration
know?
of it, but with the interest of time, I just want to be sure that we can answer some additional questions. But I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that.
Mhm. Okay. To follow up on residential, I've applied to all our day treatments in their area and have been denied or on wait lists. If I shift gears and apply to the residential schools, which the school and family are both in support of, how do we get the residential piece of that financially covered through OPWDD? It's my understanding that it has to be approved through OPWDD.
So most of the kids that I work with that are in the Springbrook school don't have eligibility to be there residentially. We're getting OPWDD eligibility as they're ready to graduate out of the residential program. So that would be more, I don't have the answer to that. OPWDD might, because if they're in a residential school, they can't have care management.
What are the time spans of evaluations being considered valid?
Maybe are we talking maybe an ADOS, an autism evaluation? Psychological evaluations for IQ is every 3 years. So they like to see that something's been done in the last 3 years. Adaptive, depending on the child's age, they're looking at least every year for that adaptive assessment because of how children grow and age and develop. Autism, that's typically not something, once you're diagnosed with autism, you're diagnosed with autism. They will, if a child was diagnosed at a young age, say 3 or 4, for example, and they're coming to us at 16 or so and trying to go through eligibility, they will ask, because I have that now, they're asking if any other subsequent evaluations have been completed since that initial diagnosis at age 3, for example, but they're not requiring that a new one be done.
We had a
Those were
question also in the chat. How often do care managers meet with the family and or the school in this process of working together?
Madison, do you want to touch on that from your care manager, previous care manager brain?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on the need of the person. There are different tier levels that somebody can have. So there's tiers 1 through 4. Um, tier 1 is kind of the least amount of support that somebody might need, and then if someone is considered a tier 4, that's the most support that somebody would need. Care managers, uh, they're required to, for those tiers 1 through 3, see people face to face once every 3 months, and then have some other kind of communication with the person or their family every single month, whether that's a phone call or an email or reaching out to one of their service providers. If somebody is a tier 4, they're required to see that person face to face every single month. I know for our agency, people have needs that come up more than every month or every 3 months. So if somebody has a certain situation and you are meeting with them every week, that's fine. We'll meet with people as often as we need to support them and help them live independently. And that can be at their home, that can be at the school, meeting with the school and their providers, out in the community. It really just kind of depends on the person and their situation and how much support they need.
Thank you.
Any other, we have any other questions? I'm just gonna scroll through the chat to see if we missed any.
Something else I wanted to highlight quick on our website while Nancy's looking is every month we offer a variety of different professional development series. So we have a lot of, guest speakers coming and talking to us as care managers as well as family members about supports and services that they offer. And most of the time we're able to record those and then we post them on our website. So you don't have to be enrolled in our services to attend one of the webinars. They're free. So we've recently had like mental hygiene services came and did a webinar for us on what services they offer. We've had people come and talking about supported decision making, guardianship. We just recently had this company called Game U that does community classes, Able accounts, and they're all stored on our website under resources. So if anybody at any time can go and just kind of skim through um, and watch those webinars that we might have had in the past to get some information for yourself.
That's great. We had one question. If a student is denied OPWDD services and the appeal is unsuccessful, perhaps because the parents' ratings overestimated their abilities, what alternative options are available?
If the parents overestimated their abilities, or if somebody, it wasn't explained to them how to fill out that adaptive assessment, they can always have another evaluation done. The difficulty would be if it's an outside agency that is going to do it and they've already done it once, your insurance might not pay for it to be done again. But that is always an option, is you can have that adaptive assessment completed again. And that's really, the adaptive assessment is talking to the teachers about what they see at school and the parents. So it's not, testing the child as an IQ would be. It's the parents and the teachers completing questionnaires about what their abilities are and what they see at school.
Someone offered some information too, that when you're completing your portion of the Vineland, be sure to be thinking whether the individual can do this task without any support at all. You want to be really very clear. I know I've seen some parents, they don't want to say, their child can't do something, and so they are a little less honest on the form, but it really needs to be very clear what they can't do, so that they see a need for that person for these services.
Absolutely. And when I talk with families about, starting the process, there's been, parents and caregivers that have been in tears because they don't want to talk about the bad. They don't want to point out the negative. But unfortunately, in order for OPWDD to get a good picture, because OPWDD doesn't meet the child or the adult face to face, they're just going by what they read. So in order for them to get an accurate picture about the challenges, we have to unfortunately point out the bad, the negative, the behaviors, those concerning things, because they have to know and have to see that full picture. And sometimes we know that people are not what they appear to be on paper. So we have to point out all of those things. And it's hard for parents to talk about, the bad, the good, and the ugly, but we have to do that in order to give OPWDD that picture, the challenges.
Definitely. With the events that you mentioned, can anyone enroll in those throughout the state, or does it just have to be folks in the southern tier?
It can be anybody,
Okay, great.
because we've had providers on there that service, all across New York. So there's parent to parent. That's an agency that is, their office is in the capital area, but they provide, outreach and support throughout the state of New York.
We had another question about open door meet. Let me see. Um, are you familiar with counties having open door meetings?
Yes, because Otsego County is trying to get one started. They're calling it No Wrong Door. Um, to just to kind of pool agent or county resources together so that everybody can be aware of what's out there. We're just trying to put it together in Otsego County. So I can just say I've heard of it right now. And then until we have the meeting, I can't really give more information on what I know.
Okay. Somebody said that they weren't sure if they're still doing them. I thought families just watched a video about the open door system, and that the videos make it more accessible.
Oh, I think that's referring to the front door. The front door
Yeah.
do have a new kind of
Oh, yes.
system that you can watch videos.
Yep. So they used to, if you wanted to go through eligibility, you had to do a front door information session where it was a webinar that you had to sit through and listen to the front door facilitators talk about it. So now they've broken them down into, 4 and 5 minute videos. Um, there might be like 6 or 7 different videos just to kind of make it easier for parents to watch the information, because I think they were only offering it like once in the morning and once at night, but it was only um a couple of times a month, and it was just, I think it was just getting to the point where it's hard for people to do things during the day, then because you're working during the day, then your kids are home at night, so there isn't really an opportunity to do those things. Now it's more on demand, so you can go on and view the videos. And they're on there for anyone. You don't have to, have a special login. After I heard that they were on there, I just went onto their website and watched the videos because I wanted to see what they were telling people.
It was good to do that. Any other questions folks have? Now's your chance. And if you prefer to unmute, if you want to ask the question, I'm okay with that. We've got a lot of thank yous from folks for answering the questions. Don't forget, like Juliet said, if you don't have a good care coordinator and you're frustrated, you always have the right to choose a different agency. And I put in the chat the link to all the different care coordination agencies and which ones are appropriate for your area. And I'll put that in again.
Excuse me.
Sure.
I wanted to know, first of all, this is very informative and a lot of information to take, okay, all at once. So I'm glad that you offer it, because a person like myself, I'm almost approaching 70, raising my grandkids. My grandchild that needs this service can be challenging navigating technology like that. So, my grandson, we went to the self-direction. I took the training. Now I'm waiting for him to be. I think he was that's my care manager sent the papers, but he said that takes a very long time. But he doesn't seem to take the initiative to follow through when I ask him to. Really follow back with an adequate answer. So you did post on there some number I can call. Is that feasible to do that, or is that going over their heads? What is your suggestion?
So you're calling the care manager. You don't feel like you're getting anywhere. Like Nancy said, their agency can provide advocacy to help with that process. You could also call and speak to their supervisor. If you don't know who that is, worst case scenario, you can always call OPWDD for the region that you live in, and let them know that you're having trouble. And oh,
You
Sorry, you're breaking up. But yeah, just if it's not and it might not be the care coordination agency that's the problem, but the particular person. You know, I've seen many people contact the agencies and work with them through that. So it's always you're right. Don't hesitate. And if
Yep, you could.
somebody is not assisting you with that process, that is something that you can always contact Disability Rights New York to advocate for, or Parent to Parent, or one of these other agencies like Southern Tier Connect.
Mhm. You can always ask for, if you don't feel like you're making a connection with your particular care manager, you can always ask to be assigned to another care manager within your agency, because you know you might be satisfied with Southern Tier Connect, but for some reason you're just not making that connection with that care manager. You can always ask to be switched to another care manager within the agency. If you're frustrated with the agency, you can make that choice to switch to another organization.
We have a few more
Thank you.
questions. To follow up on the residential piece, I've applied to all of our day treatments in our area and have been denied or I'm on waiting lists. I hear about this often. If I shift gears and apply to the residential schools, which the school and the family are both in support of, how do we get the residential piece of that financially covered through OPWDD? It's my understanding that it has to be approved through OPWDD.
So we touched on this a little bit before. The students that I have worked with in a residential setting for school, the residential school programs don't have OPWDD eligibility, and you don't get a care manager with a care coordination organization. So that would be something I would touch base with the school program to find out how that is funded, because I'm not sure, because once they are in a residential school placement, they can no longer have care management.
It's all covered through SED then. But once they start to get to that point where they're going to age out of the residential school, a care coordinator will be assigned, and there will be a transition coordinator from OPWDD assigned,
Right.
and they'll assist
Yep.
with getting things started.
Yep. So the transition coordinator with OPWDD will work with the residential schools. They have what's called IPCs, individual plan coordinators, who make that connection and get that eligibility. And then once they've got eligibility, then they connect with a care coordination organization, depending on where they're going to live. What is the transition plan going to be? Are they returning home? Are they going to a residential home with an agency? So they'll connect them with a care coordination organization based on where that individual is going to be living. So we have, I've had a lot of students who are at the Springbrook School that their home is in New York City, but they're going to be living in a residential facility in Delaware County at Otsego County. So they get a care coordination organization based on where the individual, that student, is living, not where the parents live.
Hi, my name's Dina Sanders, and I had put a question in the chat. Is if a student is denied OPWDD services and we appeal and give further information and we're unsuccessful, maybe because the parents' ratings have overestimated the student's abilities, but we still believe that this student definitely has needs. Specifically life skills, and is not going to find success. I was told that you can reapply with new information. We had been told that you can't appeal an appeal. Is that accurate, that we can reapply?
Yes, you can
Provide
always
new?
reapply
Okay.
if there's new information. So if you did the appeal and it was denied, have you done the fair hearing? That's another option too, the Medicaid fair hearing.
I don't believe they have done the fair hearing.
There's also the problem with the fair hearing would be time limits. So there's 60 or 90 days from the time of denial that you have to, I don't have a letter handy to quote it directly, but there's a time period when you can apply for a fair hearing. You can always have the adaptive assessment completed again. The difficulty would be if it's done by an outside agency that bills insurance, depending on when it was done last. Insurance might not cover for it to be done again. You could always, if they're school age, you could always talk with the school and see if the school is willing to administer and score and write up the report for that again. if you have new information. Yeah, you can apply as many times as you want. There's no, like 3 strikes and you're out. You can, if you get new information, you can always apply again. If the scores don't change, like, so say you do a new adaptive assessment, the scores don't change, OPWDD still says no, an intake coordinator can talk with you about what other options there are. So I talked about, there's the children's waiver that is under the Department of Health mental health silo. We've got the OPWDD silo. There's also the mental health children's waiver silo that we can refer people to, because the parameters for that aren't as strict. The only difference is that they're not maintaining care management for people under the mental health silo for as long as they do with OPWDD, because their goal is to get people to their highest level of independence so that they can graduate from the care management program, is how it was quoted to me in the meeting I was on before this.
And I'm sorry if I missed this. Is there an age limit to the children's waiver?
21.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And just so you know as well, that's another area that we do at Disability Rights New York, where if you have been denied eligibility and you're really questioning it, we're happy to review the documents and let you know if that denial is accurate. And our services are
Extremely
free.
helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
There was another question that came in. It says, I have a client with autism who has OPWDD with waiver services, including a care manager. His school placements have not worked out, and now the family is waiting for yet another placement. I'm wondering if a residential placement might be more appropriate for at least a year, but it sounds like he would lose his OPWDD services.
So in the land of OPWDD, there aren't there aren't group homes for children. The residential placement or school programming is not under the auspices of OPWDD. So some people might be familiar with group homes that there are in communities for adults run by agencies. There are not those residential situations in OPWDD.
Very little. Any additional questions that we have? We still have about 10 minutes if anyone has any other questions. This has been really helpful, Juliet and Madison. We really appreciate you being here today and covering this area, since it is just definitely very overwhelming, and families really struggle with trying to know how to do this, and not just families, but professionals as well.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Sure. Like I said, everyone, we will send out the PowerPoint to everyone, whether or not you showed up, if you've registered, and we will post this on our YouTube page. Please consider, if you are interested in joining the Southern Tier Special Ed Task Force. We're always looking for new members, and we do have these task forces throughout the state. We all work together on different events, and all related to education and children's services. Thank you, everybody else. I really appreciate it, and I wish you guys a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.